35. You ready? Make sure your phones are put away, okay? So we're going to use, when we're dealing with investments, right? We will still use these ones when it comes to loans, but I need you to go to apps, finance, and only highlight the two that I'm about to highlight here. Balance and interest. Okay? Balance, how does that work? I highlight that right here. Notice that they all have PY in the mix. You see that? So balance, if you want the balance after a certain amount of years, you need to always make sure you multiply the years by whatever PY is. And what does it do? It will return the value of the investment after a certain time. It requires the number of periods based on PY, and you get that from the TVM solver. I will skip this one, and just because I think that if you just have these two, you're fine. Sum of interest, I already talked about it yesterday, but remember, there are differences between the two functions here. Look at balance. Is there a comma? Do you need a start and an end? You do not. Okay. For sum of interest, you need a start and end. Start is normally 1. 99.9% of the time we start at 1, and we end in whatever the time that we're interested in. So if it's after 2 years, you would go 1 comma 2 times whatever is in PY. So let's say PY is monthly. 2 years would be 2 times 12, that'd be 24. So you're interested in how much interest you've earned from the first month to the 24th month. Okay, so that's how this works. Very useful in calculating the interest earned in between. So in between meaning like not right until the end. That one works great if it's till the end, but not. Particularly when it's somewhere in between. And then there are 2 formulas that I need you to have. Okay, even more formulas. Okay, so formulas, if you want to figure out the total interest earned, yes, I would always prefer you using this function up here that we just talked about. Okay, ideally, but there's a problem, and I'll talk about it in a bit. Total interest is taking your future value minus the present value minus, what is this here, n times PMT. I explained this formula right here. Future value minus present value minus the total number of payments, that is n, okay, times the payment amount. So if this one doesn't make sense to you, then maybe have this longer version of it. What is it that we're trying to do here, folks? What is total interest earned? Listen carefully to this part. Total interest earned is basically figuring out, after taking away the money you've put in, how much has the bank given you for that investment? That's basically what you're trying to figure out. So you take your future value, take away what you've put in, like the big sum at the beginning, and then also remove any payments, any deposits you've been making along the way. Okay, so you remove that, then you're left with the interest. Okay. This one, I want to make a note here. When do you have to use that formula? Because I prefer you not using it if you can help it. I had a note here, sorry. I'm trying to find it. There it is. Star, okay? Must use if n is a decimal. I would have this written next to this. So can you use this one all the time? Yes. Can you use sum of interest? Sum of interest is the only option if you're trying to find partial interest, like earned along the way. But for total interest, if n is a decimal, you must use the formula. You cannot use this one. because it doesn't accept any decimals in it. Why would n be a decimal, folks? That's when you solve for it. And it's not always perfect, okay? Sometimes you pay off a loan in like 3.5 years because you ended up paying a little bit faster. Okay? Next, calculate the total principal invested. This is also one that you should have on your study sheet. You simply take PV and add the total deposits you've made. Okay? Total deposits you've made, and that's how you get that. And here I say it one more time. Formulas must be used if n is not a whole number. This will be the case if n is solved for. So now you've been warned. Okay. Let's dive into a few more examples here. I want you to go and actually make a correction first, because who knew that I made mistakes, right? 36, right next to this one. I made a mistake here. What did it ask you for? It didn't ask for how much interest earned after 4 years. It asked for how much do you have in the account. So you should be using balance. Can you just cross this out? We use balance, and you will go years multiplied by PY. That's what you give balance to figure out what it is. So it ends up being balance 4 times PY was 4 in this scenario. Okay, I'm going to show you here. Based on the TVM solver, it is always based on what is in your TVM solver. Okay, so 4 times 4, that is balance after 16 periods have gone by. And I won't ask you to redo it because technically we have to retype all those numbers and resolve. So just follow me here. That would be, here it is, $3,541.49. So you're wondering in this case, geez, I wonder how much I would have after 4 years. I'm just wondering how much will be in my account after 4 years, right? So 3,541. So I made a mistake there, so make sure you correct it. Let's talk about question 38 here. You know what? We never finished 37. Let's finish 37 first. Couple things with 37. When we figured out, we solved for n, and so we had to use this to figure out how many years that would be. If a question ever asked you for years and months, what would you do? You go 15 years, right? It's 15 years, and a certain number of months. So to figure out how many months, you just take the 0.73, right? Whatever decimal of a year you have, and you multiply it by 12. And that gives you 8.79, right? Which is approximately 9 months. If they ever ask you for it, that's how you, oops. No need for that. So it's 15 years and 9 months that this investment will have to run for in that particular case. If the question asks you in years and months, and it will usually say like to the nearest whole month. That's when you, other than that, decimal is fine. Yeah. Okay. Then the other part was we figured out, right, once there were regular deposits made, we figured out how long it would take, only 3 years in that case. Now, how much interest was earned in A and how much interest was earned in B? And we also want the rate of return in each scenario. Can I use sum of interest in this part? Can I use sum of interest to figure out the interest here and here? And the answer is no, because your n is a decimal. Okay? So you got to use the formula I just gave you. So let's do that here. So for investment A, total interest is future value minus present value minus n times whatever I have in payment. This works every time. What's the future value in A? The future value is 15,000. What's my present value? 10,000. Are there any payments in A? If you look at A, there are no payments, so you can actually get rid of this. This is just zero. You don't need to worry about having made any deposits. So in a nutshell, it's just $5,000 that you've earned in interest under A. Under B, there were payments made, right? So you got to go total interest is future value minus the present value minus, here's where it comes in, the formula has to be used here. Times whatever your payment was, and it was $50. So this is 15,000 minus 10,000 minus this amount right here. When you multiply it, you get 4,010 and 72 cents. So you've made this many deposits. Like if you combine them all, you made this many over this investment. So now you go 15,000 minus 10 minus 14, minus 4, and your overall interest is this much for the second investment, this much for the first. I'm not going to do the rate of return for each. Can we just cross that out, because I don't want you to later on read it. It's just going to be too much, and by now we know how to do rate of returns. How much was invested in each scenario? What do we call this? We call this principal. The amount you put in is called the principal. In scenario A, how much did we invest in scenario A? It's just $10,000. We put in the 10 grand. In scenario B, by the way, I'm using that, you can use this formula right here. This one right here. Okay. In scenario B, the principal is PV plus N times PMT. So the present value is 10,000 plus 80.2144 times 50, and I already happen to have, I crunched this number earlier already. So that's 10,000 plus 4,010, 72 cents. That ends up being $14,010.72. Just a question. Out of these two investments, A and B, which one had a greater rate of return, you think? A. You earned way more interest than this one. This one got you to your goal faster, but remember you had to put $50 in every 2 weeks. Okay, so that's how that goes. Okay, let's go to 38. I asked you to do 38. And let's try this one out here. Trish is 25 and would like to retire at the age of 60. It's actually 7 years earlier than normal for us, because it's 67 is now the official retirement age. She does not have a lot of money, but is able to make monthly deposits. That's worth highlighting right there. There are regular deposits being made, so you know PMT is not going to be zero, and it's monthly, right? So we know what PY is, and we know what PMT is just by looking at that. She goes to her bank, opens up an RRSP to start contributing and save for retirement. The bank offers a 3.8% rate, compounded semi-annually. So when Trish is 25, right, that's important. That's when it starts. That's when time starts. That's your zero, so to speak. Trisha turns 35 and stops making contributions as she has a family and purchased a home. How much will she have accumulated at this point? Determine the total interest earned. I hope you understand that this is TVM Solver because there are regular contributions, right? So let's fill this in. I'll tell you this, TVM Solver questions, they are worth 2 marks. If you make one mistake, you lose a full mark right away. But you still get 1 out of 2 if you do everything else correctly. If you make more than one mistake, then you lose the entire 2 marks. So be careful when you enter information here. Compounded semi-annually. I have to be careful. That is 2, right? This is CY right here. 3.8% interest rate, let's put that in. 275, that's my payment, and I'm investing. That's money is leaving you, so that's 275, and the payment, PY is 12 because of monthly. This is what I'm trying to figure out, the future value of the investment, right? Like how much do I have up until that point? What is PV? Present value is 0, right? There's no mention that there's a big amount being put in, so that's 0. And what about N? I'll say this is how I'm going to show it. 35 minus 25, so that's 10 years went by, right? And what do you need to multiply the years by? PY. There we go. So it gets a little messy, but I'd like to show what I've done here. It's 120. Okay, so N is 120. What does 120 represent in this particular case? PY is it's months, right? So you can actually make the conclusion that this means 120 months go by effectively. Okay, let's solve. You click that in and solve, because we're going to need whatever's in that space in TVM Solver to answer everything else. Apps, finance. So I go to future value and I press alpha, enter. And I'm going to put a $sign in front of it because that's my final answer. $40,006.97 if you round that. So that answers the first part. She will have $40,006.97. at 35. Okay, so we make clear that that's answering. And what about the interest? Can I use sum of interest? You check. Is this a decimal? It's not, right? So use sum of interest, please. It's so much easier. Sum of interest from the very first month in this case to the 120th month. It's always based on what PY is, right? So let's do that. Let's see. You must quit the screen before you do it, or else it will insert sum of interest here. So you have to quit this, then repeat that. It's very tedious. And sum of interest is right there. So you go 1, 120. So in this case, 7,006.97 earned in interest. Could you use the formula, or you could use this one, absolutely. Future value minus present value minus n times payment. I just want you to see it that both work. So future value is 40,006.97. There is no present value. I don't start with a big amount. This would be 120 times 275. I'm just going to do this real quick. 120 times 275. That's 33,000 that has been contributed over time. And you can tell already that this is going to, let me just check here. There is times where we're off by a little bit, but we're not going to sweat it. But in this case, it's exactly the same. So as long as you show us the work, you're fine. So or, big emphasis on or. I don't need you to do both. Most of the time, sum of interest will do just fine. Yeah?
How's
CY is 2 because it says it right here, Sean. Compounded semi-annually. Semi-monthly and semi-annually are different. You have that on your study sheet? Make sure. Okay. I appreciate the question, Sean. Just keep asking away. She decides to keep the money accumulated at this point in the account to earn interest until she retires. Calculate how much money she will have at retirement. Determine the total interest earned. This is always, I'm just going to ask you this over and over again so you don't forget. Let's do this here. And I will try to get some answers from the crowd here. Okay, interest hasn't changed. Not that we've been told. It's telling us that the payments stop, right? It says here, Trisha turns 35 and stops making contributions. So I'm going to highlight that with a color. I'm going to pick orange. She stops making contributions. So from this point, once she accumulated 40,000, there's no more payments. So we know that payment is 0. And what do we know about PY and CY? CY is 2, like the compounding happens every twice a year. So we know that these are going to be the same. They're locked in. So because of the payment being 0, we can kind of bundle these up and say they're going to be the same. I want to know how much I have in the future, so that's going to be my unknown. What's going to be the present value, guys? Some of you bankers in here. This amount? 40,000? Yeah. So we actually bring that over and insert it into present value. What sign will it get? It's leaving you, right? So the idea is that up there, future value was positive because it's kind of saying at that moment you're getting it, right? Like that's what you're going to have at the end. But now we put it into present value and we will figure out what the future value is. However, what is n? That's the hardest part in this case. We're going from 60, right? Minus 35. Like we're going from age 35 to 60. That's when retirement happens. Times PY, which is 2. So there you have it. That's 25 times 2. So that's 50. So let's figure this out now. How much do we have in the future? So you're letting it sit now. You're not contributing. So I'm going to go apps, finance. This is 50. I'm changing this to negative 40,000, 6.97. No payments. Future value to be determined. 2 and 2. Alpha, trace. And there it is. 102,528 and 56 cents. So that's how much the money, how much the 40,000 turned into that much. How much interest did you earn? Because this is a completely new TVM solver entry, we're going to go from 1 to, I'll give you $100 if, I'm just kidding, I don't have $100. 50. Yeah, whatever n is, if you want the entire interest, we're going to go 50. Okay, so you got to quit this screen. I'm just going to go copy paste from this one right here. Turn that into 50, and there it is. 62,521 and 59 cents interest. So I will make sure that this is amount at retirement. And this is interest earned. So just letting it sit there, you earned 62,000. Like you more than doubled your money, right? Just by letting it sit there. If Trisha decided to keep the money in the RSP until 65 instead of 60, how much more would she have available? Determine the total interest earned. Can we just do this quick here? I know time is almost up, but please stay with me here until the end. So we're going to copy paste a lot of entries. Compounding and payments stay the same. We're going to figure out the future value. No payments. We're going to assume we start with 40,000 again at the same interest rate. But in this case, we're going to go 65 minus 35. So we're considering, right, from 35 right up until 65. PY is 2. So that would be 30 times 2, which is 60. So the only thing we really need to change in our TVM solver is the 50 to a 60 there. And let's see how much more we will have. Alpha, enter. We have 123,761 and 82 cents. Determine the total interest earned. I'm going to quit this screen real quick. Copy paste. Instead of 1 to 50, I'm going to go 1 to 60. Sum of interest, just show me this, what you're doing here. That's 83,754 and 85 cents. Interest earned. Available at 65. Okay, rate of return since the start of the investment. But I will say this, omit C, okay? Like we're not gonna account for C. We're just gonna stop it right here at the end of B. Rate of return. Watch what I'm gonna do here. If you look up here for a second, I'm gonna add this interest earned and that interest earned. Like that's the total interest you've earned over your entire investment. Okay, so I'm gonna go 7,006.97 plus 62, 521.59. Put that in brackets. How much money did Trisha put in from her money overall, guys? Before you go, how much money did she put in from her own hard-earned cash? Let's go up here. She made 120 payments of $275, right? That's all she did, and then the rest she just let it sit and accumulate. So in this case, it would be 120 times 275. That cleans up to this. $33,000 times 100, and that gives you 210.69%. All right, hold on. I know I assigned some of these pages already. I'm just going to ask you to try 39 to 42, okay? Tomorrow I will see you a bit more on these kinds of questions when it comes to TVM solver. Okay, so put simple interest aside a little bit. Don't worry about that too much. Worry about TVM solver. Compound interest, the formula, sure you need to have it on your study sheet, but focus on this a bit more.